Hey the internet, this is Luck. This video is about MMOs, I promise. We will get there, stay strong. It may at first glance appear I've taken leave of my usual optimism and affection for MMOs, but I want to make it clear that criticisms made in this video are a product of that same optimism and affection, not in spite of it. With that said, the International was last week, the annual Dota 2 tournament in which, between Valve and crowdfunding, the prize pool is always breathtaking. This year the pool was up to $18 million, which is frankly amazing by any standard. Over $6 million split between the winning team. We now, as of last week, we now live in a world where a 16-year-old became a millionaire by playing a video game. I don't know if that's sunk in yet, just what that means. Imagine growing up in that world. Imagine being 9 or 10 years old and seeing that happen, watching it happen live. Imagine being able to tell your parents about it when they told you playing video games would never get you anywhere. But more importantly, more and more cash is being split between all of the teams that made the finals. More money goes into the production, visibility grows, more players are coming in than going out. More and more people can concentrate on playing Dota as a full-time job. Along with them, there are casters, commentators, streamers, video producers, web developers, team managers, coaches, event managers, promoters, not to mention all the people who work on the games to begin with. Esports is an industry all on its own. It's growing, but it still feels accessible, and if I had been born a couple of decades later, you can be sure I would have been sucked in by the exponentially increasing gravity of the spectacle of it, the possibility of it. And I know that, a lot of people don't care so much about esports beyond the general curiosity of it sort of orbiting their hobby. I think that even most Dota players aren't massively into watching the game when they could be actually playing it, except maybe to improve their own game. But the business people are paying attention. There's big money and enormous potential in the esports scene. The MOBA boom has taken hold. There are already examples of failed clones. People are chasing the money, trying to strike it rich in the gold rush, as people always will. But the rush is already over, and the current big hitters are too entrenched, really, for a newcomer to pull enough players in or away from other games to make much of a dent. And if this sounds familiar, you've probably been playing MMOs for some time over the last 10 years. Yes, MOBA, Dota, Hero Brawler, whatever you want to call it, it's the next generation mega hit PC craze, and in many ways it's another evolution of the RPG. It's mutated into something different, but it certainly shares a common ancestor with MMOs and action RPGs. So by adapting, we're going to stretch the evolution metaphor, MOBAs found a new niche, a new way to thrive, and have become incredibly successful in that, to the point where they are putting a significant dent into the influx of new players into MMOs as part of their natural player churn cycle. Now, if MMOs want to redirect some of these new players back into the fold, or back towards MMOs, they need a little of the magic that came with the MOBA, a little some of that je ne sais quoi that makes them so attractive to new players, to a younger audience, or else MMOs will just fade into obscurity. Too much of a risk to invest what is required to make a really good MMO, and therefore underfunded and out of touch, and they flop. And that cycle just serves as evidence of their increasing irrelevance. And I'm not saying that MMOs all have to suddenly become competitive games. I'm certainly not saying MMOs should all suddenly try and be esports. I think that would be a silly thing to say. And I think that trying to muscle in on a space so dominated would be foolish ultimately. What MOBAs have done, and Dota especially, is take the concept of evergreen PvP, or the concept of evergreen content, and honed it into an incredibly sophisticated and incredibly fine edge. And there is no bottom to the well of novelty in Dota. No two matches are the same, and yet the pitch that you play on is fixed, the objectives are set, and much of what the actual game is doing can be timed to the second. Now, Dota, from my extremely, admittedly basic understanding, it's all about decisions. Every second, moment to moment, you can make a smart choice or you can make a foolish one. Given enough time, inaction becomes a choice. And even after plumbing the extraordinary mechanical depth, there's always something more to learn, a new situation to apply that learning to that is created by every decision made up to that point. Never to be repeated again. It's a constant application of learning and knowledge. And when compared with what is expected of us as MMO players, I can't help but feel MMOs have fallen way behind the curve on giving players interesting and impactful decisions to make on a constant and consistent basis. And I think this comes down to a couple of fundamental flaws of modern MMO design, though. The idea that everyone always has to be equal, what players get can't be taken away. Obstacles always must be minimal for the and on the flip side of that, for the MOBA approach, what makes MOBAs so compelling for so long, despite not having that kind of bespoke content that is made for MMOs. MMO players would have to accept certain fundamental things about a game. Things like people who perform better will have an advantage. They'll have to accept that whatever advantage they do manage to gain can be lost just as easily or more easily than it was gained, and it will be lost as well. That's the thing. It not just might be, but it will be lost. And another thing is that setbacks, not achieving what you wanted to, setbacks being an intrinsic and necessary part of the game, not obstacles in the way of the game, not obstacles in the way of an objective, but a natural part of the process of playing the game. And frankly, I don't see that happening. I don't see the majority of MMO players as the medium is right now. I don't see us as a group accepting those ideas. The practices of MMOs are too entrenched, the audience is too used to them, and much as there are calls for these sorts of changes on forums all the time, anywhere that it has been attempted or a move has been made in the direction, it's been met with open hostility. Look at Blizzard announcing the flying changes in Warlords of Draenor. Look at how that went for them, and that was such a little thing. And it's just too much of a break from the cultural context of the typical MMO. And again, this doesn't mean that MMOs are somehow bad or MOBAs are somehow better. It just means that for the new generation of PC game enthusiasts, MMOs are just going to be irrelevant. You know, do you think that the generation of kids growing up with Minecraft are going to be impressed by quest chains? Do you think they're going to be impressed by running the same instances every night for months? You know, they'd probably dig the PvP if they're into that kind of thing, but if they were, why would they pick an MMO over the game that everyone plays, over the game that their older siblings play, their friends at school play? And before you start, this isn't a this generation hasn't got the attention span issue. If you think that, it's because you aren't paying attention, which is exactly how you become out of touch and eventually irrelevant. It's not all doom and gloom though. Crowfall and Camelot Unchained, I think, have some good ideas in this direction. And I'm sure there's other games as well that you can think of. So we'll see how that plays out. Odds are there will be games with a solid niche following, which is exactly what they're shooting for, and must be considered successes if and when they achieve that after the initial huge first month spike. And I can't help but wonder, and I think about this a lot, if what they're doing is a step in a direction that will keep MMOs relevant for another decade, or if it's too late. You know, if we're too far into the cycle, if we left it too long, we're too slow to adapt, and we just have no choice but to gracefully retire from the big leagues. which I don't think would be the worst fate either. Really, this is my optimism kicking in. Being able to refine the medium without the weight of expectation and the inevitable cycle of hype and disappointment, it might be the best way for MMOs to really thrive, you know, out of the spotlight, watching from the sidelines as millions watch millionaires being made. And that's all I have to say about that. If there's anything you'd like to say about it, please do tell us in the comments below. Give this video a like if you think the conversation is worth having, if you got anything out of it, and do make sure you subscribe for many wonderful things from fabulous people, and I will see you again really soon. Thanks. Bye.
Make sure to level up your MMO knowledge by visiting MMORPG.com, subscribing to our YouTube channel, and by following us on social media. To catch up on the week's biggest MMO news, watch our latest MMO FTW. And to see if there's a better MMO out there for you, watch one of our latest First Impressions videos. Thanks for watching.